One piece of smart technology could help solve a murder mystery in Arkansas.
Two Pine Bluff teens are in jail tonight facing murder charges. Police say they are in custody in connection to the shooting death of two 17-year-olds.
It was a bizarre story in Russellville, Arkansas today. A man who reportedly quit his job over low pay went on a shooting spree with two handguns.
Tributes are pouring in for Ann Presley. The Little Rock TV anchorwoman died over the weekend.
A suspect in the deadly Fayetteville shooting on New Year's Day in court this morning.
A Little Rock mother is pleading for help tonight. She is asking anyone.
Thanks for listening to Strictly Homicide, an Arkansas true crime podcast covering lesser-known cases out of the natural state. I'd like to start off by thanking my Patreon supporters. If you'd like to help support us, you can find us on Patreon and help with as little as $1 a month. There's also a donate button for a one-time donation on strictlyhomicide.com. Please stay tuned until the end of the show to hear a few promos from some of my favorite shows. Warning: Strictly Homicide covers cases that include sexual assault, violence, and homicide. Episodes may contain explicit language and are not suitable for young ears. Listener discretion is advised. Thanks for downloading another episode of Strictly Homicide Podcast. So I'm glad to admit that when I started my podcast, I had no idea what I was doing, recording-wise. Episode 1 was recorded in the worst environment, along with mediocre equipment. My husband, bless his heart, did his best to make it listenable. Episode 1 is one of my favorite cases. I actually didn't know anything about this case before it was suggested to me. Because I, and a lot of listeners, favorited this episode, I decided what better time than Halloween to re-record and release it. So sit back and enjoy a much better quality of episode 1. The story of John Lawrence Markle is like a Hollywood horror movie. Only it's real, and it happened right here in Little Rock, Arkansas. This case is often called Nightmare on Main Street, a really fitting title for what happened to the Markle family in their cute 3-story house the night of November 15th, 1987. Before we get to Little Rock, let's go back to 1941 when Academy Award-winning actress Mercedes McCambridge and writer William Field had a son named John Lawrence Markle. John's parents divorced when he was about 5 years old, and his mom remarried director Fletcher Markle in 1950. When John was about 9, he decided to adopt him. His biological father would go on to remarry and have more children of his own. His mother, Mercedes, was best known for her role in All the King's Men because this was the role that she would win an Oscar for. She was also in the movie Giant with James Dean in 1956, and if none of those ring a bell, you may recognize her from this role.
Let the enemy have no power over me.
I'm the son of iniquity, be powerless to harm.
Your mother sucks cocks and hell,
Lord, hear
Paris,
my
you
prayer.
faithless
My
swine.
cry, come unto me,
The Lord be with you.
and also with you.
Let us pray.
Mercedes was the voice of the demon in The Exorcist. John's childhood wasn't anything to be jealous of. His mom would often leave him with strangers or drop him off at relatives' homes while she was working or partying. John would often see his mother drunk and fighting with her co-stars. He was so eager for any type of attention that his mother would give him since he felt abandoned by her. John was a very bright young man, but his mother would consistently put him down and act like he was nothing to her. It's no wonder that John was extremely depressed and angry. John attended UCLA, earning a master's degree in 1968. That same year, he married a young lady named Christine. He stayed at UCLA, earning a PhD in economics. He later joined the New York investment firm Salomon Brothers. He worked there until about 1979. That was the year that he was hired by Stevens Incorporation. He packed up his family and moved to an adorable 3-story home at 1820 Main Street in Little Rock, Arkansas. John and Christine had 2 daughters, Amy Michelle and Suzanne Marie. Both girls loved dance, participating in the Girl Scouts, and were extremely close. Christine also volunteered for the Girl Scouts and was very active in the community. Many who knew the family would say that John was a widely respected man and loved his family deeply. Not only did John take care of his mother's investments, he was an influential businessman, and in his earlier years, the accounts that he handled were exceptional. His position required him to consistently monitor movement in an esoteric account, often working long hours running the future trading department basically alone. He aided the co-owners Jack and Whit Stevens with their financial portfolio, and after 8 short months, John was promoted to vice president. On July 30th, 1985, John made what was believed to be his first international trade. Markle was definitely a highly respected man in the market. During the fall of 1987, one of Stevens' clients from Chicago, Gelderman Inc., brought something to the compliance officer's attention. They reported that John was manipulating a secret account in his mother's name. They claimed that he was placing orders, but would wait until the end of the trading day to indicate which account the order was for. Any losses would go to the Stevens account, and all profits would go to his mother's account. The compliance officer and other Stevens representatives confronted him. Since John had a heart attack 2 years earlier and still suffered from heart issues, Stevens placed Markle on medical leave. John kept a journal, and during this time he wrote the following entries. October 26, 1987. I wake depressed, and by Tuesday this will be 3 weeks of unresolved chaos. Christine and the children are beginning to feel the pressure. Amy, in particular, doesn't want to move to Australia or anywhere else. October 27th, 1987. My wife Christine is the greatest woman alive, and my children are very best. I am broke, and they have no inheritance left. Christine says that I have put the family last, and I have. There is really only one choice now. I was only able to find 2 arrest records from a year before. On the night of August 16, 1986, John Markle was arrested for public intoxication and patronizing a prostitute. That charge was dismissed, though. On November 9th, in 1987, the Chicago firm Gelderman sent the Stevens firm more information about what John was doing. That same day, John contacted his insurance company and inquired about what type of insurance he had and if there were any suicide clauses. The information that the firm gave Stevens Inc. led to John being fired from his job on November 13th. John pled with the Stevens to settle his debt. He offered to put up $800,000 of his mother's money into a Stevens account, giving her the interest until she died. Then the money would belong to the Stevens. John's mother was not aware of this and never agreed to the plan. The Stevens declined the offer anyway and gave him 30 days to come up with the $1 million in restitution, or else they were taking legal action against him. That's $1 million in 1987. Today, that would be over $2.2 million. That same day, Christine and John went into RAO Video and rented A Nightmare on Elm Street. Suzanne and Amy told their dance teacher that they were having a Freddy party with their parents that night. On November 15th, John went into a gallery located near their home on Main Street and purchased a mask. The mask was said to be pretty expensive, and he didn't even try it on. It was an old man's face with wrinkled dark skin, huge nose, and it had a partly bald head. It also had a huge mustache. The clerk said that when John bought the mask, he gave her a very uneasy feeling, and it just didn't feel right. I've seen a picture of this mask. I've shared it on social media, and I'll share it again. But be warned, this mask is something nightmares are made of. The mask seriously scared the shit out of me. On November 16, 1987, a thunderstorm was causing outages throughout the night. This scared the girls, so they slept in the same room on the second floor of their home. John made a call to his attorney, Richard Lawrence, and said that there was an emergency and then ended the call abruptly. Richard thought that this was unusual and began to worry. He phoned the police to notify them of the call and asked for someone to check on the Markle house. Lawrence also headed to the house on Main Street. When he arrived at the Markle home, he noticed a single light on in the house. He drove around the home until the police arrived around 4:15 a.m. They found the front door unlocked, so the officers went inside and discovered Markle dead in his downstairs study. Lying beside him were 2 pistols, as well as the blood-spattered, creepy-ass old man Halloween mask. A 3rd pistol was found in an upstairs bathroom. There was a black briefcase with a note saying that it was for the attorney Lawrence. Inside of the briefcase, he left 64 $100 bills, $5,000 money order, assorted personal papers, 2 letters to Lawrence, a handwritten will to replace his old one. The new will mentioned neither his wife nor his daughters, and he also wrote a 12-page letter to his mother. Throughout the home, they found 18 firearms, and on this night, John used 3 of them. The suicide note was dated November 16, 1987, 2:30 a.m., and signed John Lawrence Markle. In the living room, they found a TV with static, a VCR with the movie Nightmare on Elm Street, as if the movie had been playing to the very end, with the TV left on. On the 2nd floor, the rookie detective entered one of the girls' rooms with pink walls. The pink walls contained blood spatter, a sight that has never left this detective's mind. 13-year-old Amy had been shot 4 times, and 9-year-old Suzanne had been shot 5, both in the head and chest. As they continued to search the home, they headed up to the 3rd floor. They went into the master suite and found Christine. She had been shot 3 times in the head and chest. The whole Markle family had been shot, Suzanne 5 times, Amy 4, and Christine 3. And one of the biggest twists of them all is that John was shot twice. The meaning of this is unknown, but fits in with the completely twisted murder-suicide that was planned out weeks prior, according to detectives. The suicide note read,
"Let it hereby be stated as true, and I, John L. Markle, murdered my wife and 2 children, Amy and Suzanne, then committed suicide myself. My wife had no knowledge or part in this. I think the evidence shall so provide."
In the letter to his mother, he wrote about growing up as an actress's son, being left with relatives and strangers, seeing his mother drunk all the time, arguing with coworkers, and how he felt like his conception was just a plan to save a bad marriage that didn't work. He also personally blamed her for the suicide. John wrote, "I was essentially raised by live-in maids and relatives. I was conceptualized to save a bad marriage. I watched you try and kill yourself twice. You've never been there for me when the chips were down. When I cried on the phone, you called me a sniveling wimp. Is this clear to you? That you have hurt every member of my family? That you have hurt me? That I stood by you under some really adverse conditions? And that you have never done anything but manipulate me for your purposes? You were never around much when I needed you. So now I and my whole family are dead. So you can have the money. Funny how things work out, isn't it?" It was found that the whole family had traces of antidepressants in their blood, and that John had changed the will on November 9th. After the deaths, McCambridge fought to block any publication of the letter that he wrote to her. But in 1989, the Arkansas Supreme Court ruled against her and made the letter part of the public police file. He did exonerate her from any financial wrongdoings in his scheme to divert the funds into her account. Those losses totaled $5.2 million. But there was no evidence that McCambridge knew what was going on. She received more than half of his estimated $890,000 estate when he killed himself. Mercedes McCambridge died on March 2, 2004 of natural causes. What a story. Since I'm not a native of this state, I have never heard of this case. A friend of mine asked me to cover it when I was receiving ideas on upcoming episodes. After getting into the research of this case, I knew this had to be episode 1. There is so much controversy with this case. The way the murders took place, the weird details, and the rumors that it was never a murder-suicide, but just a murder. Could this have been a hired murder? Was this payback for what John Markle did to the very wealthy known past employer? It was known that Mr. Markle adored his wife and kids. Why would he include them in his suicide? The house is still sitting on Main Street, and it's beautiful. Thanks for re-listening to episode 1. I really appreciate it. Strictly Homicide is written, hosted, and produced by me, Nicki T. The original music is done by Mr. T. No, not that one. My Mr. T.
If you are a fan of the show, please make sure you are subscribed on iTunes and please rate and review the show. You can also find us on Patreon where you can support the show for as little as $1 a month.
If there is a case that you would like to discuss, or if you have any comments, corrections, or suggestions, send us an email at strictlyhomicide@yahoo.com or on social media. You can find us on most social media sites by searching Strictly Homicide Podcast and on Twitter as @StrictlyHMICIDE. That's Strictly Homicide with no O. You can also visit our website, strictlyhomicide.com. Stick around to hear a few promos from some of the best podcasts around, and until next time, y'all stay safe, especially you, Arkansas.
I'm Javier with Pretend Radio, and this season, I'm embedding myself in a cult.
Throw him to the ground and get his devils out! Forgive us, Jesus! Forgive us, Jesus!
Families will turn on each other.
Let me make it really clear. I am Jamie's mother, but what he says is lies.
Babies will be ripped away from their parents.
It's hurtful to see them and know that their lives could have been much different in a home outside of there.
We're not letting go of God's will with each other. That's right.
And the powerful, well, they'll be held accountable.
As a district attorney, it's probably better for me not to comment.
Why is that? Why is that? Survivors are not holding back, and the church is not backing down. Many in the media have tried to get in front of the accused cult leader Jane Whaley and have failed.
We have asked you to leave.
But somehow, I got in.
How are you, sir? Yeah, I'm here to speak with Jane Whaley. She invited me to service today. Yeah.
This season, we're going deeper into the Word of Faith Fellowship than ever before. This story is on a collision course, and it's not going to end well.
Why would anybody want to harm him?
Sometimes we hurt other people by hurting people they love.
Pretend Radio, Season 3, The Prophet.
What's the matter with us? We're not gonna burn God's will! That's right.
911, what's your emergency?
Every 60 seconds, a person is murdered somewhere in the world.
There was a shootout in my house. I can't believe it.
What causes ordinary people to do unthinkable things?
He stabbed me in my neck. And he says, look how easily I could kill you.
The Minds of Madness is a true crime podcast that examines the most disturbing criminal minds. We shed a light on the devastating impact these violent crimes have on the victims and their families.
When you get calls in the night, you know they're not good or they're wrong numbers.
You'll hear about the incredible strength of the survivors and what they did to fight back.
I was studying his face because I was thinking, if I get out of this, I'm going to get you someday.
Subscribe to the Minds of Madness podcast today on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and Google Play.
Hey guys, it's Melissa and Mandy with the Moms and Murder podcast. We're a true crime podcast that's sure to make you laugh without compromising the seriousness of the content.
Despite our name, we aren't just for the moms. Our show is for all the Diet Coke drinking, chicken loving, Dateline watching people in your life. Come for the murder and stay for the witty humor and pop culture references.
And you never know, you may even hear from some of your favorite names in the world of true crime, like Dateline's Josh Mankiewicz.
Do you have a preference on what we call you? Josh, Mankiewicz, Manx, Sir Manx-a-Lot?
I don't hear Sir Manx-a-Lot quite as often as
I can make it happen for you. I will make it happen.
Broken Homicide's Derek Levasseur.
Are you tearing up on me? I saw you waiting.
So beautiful, everything you're saying.
Or even America's sweetheart, Allie Sweeney.
The neighbor suggested that perhaps Kathleen had been attacked by an owl.
The owl theory that Melissa and Allie Sweeney believe.
Again, so judgy.
Check out Moms and Murder anywhere podcasts are found.